Well, holy shit, 49er faithful. Here we are. Here we are on Monday, October 25th. Week 7 of the NFL season is in the books. I'm your host, Rob Schuh. I was a hell of a lot more optimistic about this season and this 49ers team before this weekend, but here we are indeed. I am joined tonight by a very special guest. He's not new to the channel. He is back for the second time. We love having him in here. Please welcome Jessie Naylor from Last Second Sports. Jessie, how are you feeling this fine Monday evening?
Gosh, it's a weird feeling, Rob, because there's a big part of me that's like, I told you so. But then there's that fan in me that's going, why couldn't I have been wrong? Why could I have not been wrong in this situation? Like, I just want the team to win, for gosh sakes. Like, that's where I'm at. It's a weird feeling, to be real with you.
It really is. I mean, I'm a guy who's never at a loss for words, and there will be points in this broadcast where I will be at a loss for words because I just don't know what to say at this point when it comes to certain aspects of this situation. For any of you that are not familiar with Jessie and Last Second Sports, again, the link is down in the description of the video. Go over there and subscribe. Jessie runs a channel that not only covers the 49ers, but also has the Lions, the Cowboys, and the Broncos as well. He has excellent content over there. He's been building the channel back up, has already more than doubled my own subscriber count in coming back from a previous high of over 3,000 subscribers. So if you thought you were subscribed, make sure you go back and check it out. Jessie, you guys are doing awesome work over there on that channel.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. I appreciate it. I mean, obviously, what happened over there kind of sucks, but we are on the grind. We're on the up and up. And, I appreciate you for having me on again. And I think the last time you were on was on the old channel. So to be fair, I've got to have you on the new channel, right? It's only fitting. So
yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Definitely.
We'd be happy to make that happen.
Yeah, definitely. So we got to make that happen for sure. But Rob, I always enjoy putting out content with you. I think you're hilarious. So I love doing this with you.
Well, I got to have the damn jokes tonight because we need something to laugh about, right? If we don't laugh, we're just going to cry through this thing, and that's unacceptable for the faithful. Yeah, for those of you that are here on the channel or just seeing this video for the first time, I thought it would be a great idea to sort of set the table of where Jessie and I were heading into this game. If you follow my content, you probably know that I was being, what now is clear, was overly optimistic. I was hoping that the 49ers fixes were quick, the type that you sort of snap out of, the type that all of a sudden the components come together, they click, and what you had seen in spurts and small sputters becomes a more consistent product on the field. And as the game started Sunday night, I thought to myself, thank God I was right. The 49ers look fantastic. They're marching the ball down the field, no question. And then I got punched in the mouth. So I came into it feeling that my pregame pump-up show that I did on my channel was making a difference, that 49ers fans were reversing the mojo that this team had up to this point. I ordered fresh gear from NFL Shop, the Jerry hoodie that I had that's now draped in the corner because it clearly didn't have enough mojo on it to work. So I'll take some responsibility in not being able to affect this game with the butterfly effect. But I was, in fact, going into it a bit too optimistic. But Jessie, I'm curious if you'll walk us through where were you at with this team prior to Sunday?
Well, Rob, first, I have to say it's nice to hear you, who's not on the team, take more responsibility than the starting quarterback did for that loss. That's fantastic of you, Rob. You, instead of that little Super Bowl badge, we need to get you a captaincy because that's what a captain does. That's what a leader does. Rob,
that's right.
That's fantastic.
That's right.
All right. So for me, I expected that this team could still win 11 games. I said bare minimum expectations should be 10 wins. I felt like they could beat the Colts, they could beat the Bears, and then they would be right back on track, and you'd be going into that second Arizona game where you are at home, and you probably are able to steal that one, right? You're riding some momentum, you're good to go. So I figured 10-win team should be the expectations. I also think that looking back on it, I definitely led with my heart in that Colts game. I had the 49ers winning 24-20, but everything that I said was leaning towards the Colts winning. I just decided to pick the 49ers. So, after watching that first drive, it went pretty much like I had thought it would. When I was talking to Grant, I said, I think after 2 weeks off that they go down, they scored pretty quickly on that first drive. I'm curious to see what happens to the offense after that. And what happened to the offense after that was exactly what we have seen all season long. And the fact that it didn't get better after 2 full weeks off, that was disheartening and that was discouraging.
Very discouraging. And it's great to call out that idea that they had 2 weeks to stew on it. We as fans had those same 2 weeks to stew on it. And it was very much the same inconsistent product on the field. And I did not get the sense from Coach Shanahan that he was taking ownership of that in the press conference afterwards. In fact, I just saw a dejected and beaten down individual at that point. And I'll give him the benefit of the doubt in that it was terrible weather. He was coming in off of a tough loss and needed to regroup. And I didn't get a chance to hear his voice today. But all the beat reporters are saying that, in fact, it was not all the beat reporters. Some beat reporters are reporting that, in fact, there was a new vigor in what he was saying on the conference call today. And I sure hope so, because to this point, what we're seeing is unacceptable. And for me, it is always the buck stops here type of mentality where you look to the top. If there's a company out there that's underperforming and the shareholders are upset, the board of directors comes in and looks squarely at the CEO. They start at the top of the organization, especially when you have dysfunction throughout. It's just crazy here. Well, that leads us into our first topic when we talk about a little bit of craziness. Let's throw up our banner here. But in the press call today, Coach Shanahan clarified that he's not at a point in the season where he's willing to play the rookies, talking about Lance, Sermon, Banks, that he doesn't want to get those rookies additional reps just to get them reps, and that playing rookies just to get them experience isn't always the best for their development anyway. My initial question to you is, are you buying this?
I mean, I'm buying it from a standpoint that Kyle means it. I'm not buying it from a standpoint that that's the right decision to make. Listen, I'm not saying to play all these guys. I'm not saying to bring in Banks all of a sudden and play him and Ambry Thomas. But to basically say that when you put in Trey, that's you waving the white flag, bro, how many times have you taken an opportunity to put your arm around this young quarterback and embrace him and you squandered it? How many times are we going to see this happen? Right after a press conference or right after the game ends in Arizona, you come in, well, he didn't play perfect, but nobody plays perfect. And then he had the interception and blah, blah, blah. Whatever he wanted to say, he never takes the opportunity and puts his arm around anybody. It's the most frustrating thing to hear. So now you're waving the white flag if you play the rookie. Okay, got it, coach. I think you're waving the white flag by playing an 8-year veteran who plays like a rookie. I don't know about you, but there was the video that I posted of the play where he threw the interception, the Debo interception that wrapped that game up. Sanu is wide open, not only for a first down, but a touchdown on that same play. That's the decision that you're going with. You're going with that guy who was 1 of 11 on third down when you just watched Trey Lance against the best team in football on the road in his first career start do what? They went 3 and out one time, I believe. One time. Every other time they were able to get across the 50. They sustained drives. That's even with multiple drives starting at first and 15, first and 20. Didn't matter. They found a way to get first downs because Trey Lance brings an extra dynamic that Jimmy Garoppolo simply doesn't have. And for everybody who said that Jimmy Garoppolo would have won that Arizona game if he played, I'm going to bet you Trey Lance would have won that game last night if he played, because there was an NDSU quarterback that made a difference with his mobility. And guess who it wasn't? It wasn't the one on this team. That was the difference last night.
Yeah, it's fair, absolutely fair to wonder if Trey could have won that game last night. And that play that you posted to Twitter, if you guys don't follow Jessie on Twitter, his Twitter handle is right there below his beautiful face. It was, I mean, not just open, like unbelievably open, super frustrating type of open, just jaw-dropping type of open. And you call out something there that is very interesting to me as well. And it is a question that has been developing in my mind, which is, does Kyle Shanahan really have the ability or know how to wrap his arms around a player? It seems like a tool that he leaves in his tool bag that he refuses to get out. He's constantly using the stick approach, which is publicly questioning players, questioning their work ethic, putting them in a difficult situation where now the media is constantly asking questions about their own personal performance. And it can have a pretty devastating effect on that player. And in those instances where it's had a negative impact, it's almost a refusal to do the opposite, to simply take it in-house, to have those one-on-one conversations, to wrap his arms around the player, to support them publicly, to shield them from those critical comments that you know are coming, and instead almost prefer to pour gasoline on the fire and fan the flames. It's very frustrating to watch, and it doesn't seem to be having any benefit for the 49ers at this point. It's not as if this technique is working more often than it's not. I believe that it has harmed more young players than it has developed.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. And I mean, even to start out today by saying that Jimmy played his worst game, listen, if this is your starter and this is who you're going to continue to go with, what is the point of even saying that? Like, it's not needed. We saw it. We know they don't need to hear that from you, coach. That's the last thing that needs to be heard. I have two questions for you, Rob. First one is this: at what point does the pendulum swing? And here's what I mean by that. Okay. So going into the season, a lot of people were under the thought, myself included, that the reason Trey Lance isn't starting week 1 is because the veterans wanted Jimmy to play. Okay. The veterans wanted him. This is who they've won with, this and that. At what point does the pendulum swing the other way, where you continue to hold on to Jimmy despite the fact that he's not playing good ball and they're losing games that they should win? At what point does he lose the locker room because he holds on too long? What do you think that point is?
I mean, you have to think that the momentum to that shift has already occurred, right? The pendulum has begun the swing to the other side, right? Yeah. It has passed that point. And you have to imagine that there is a fair percentage of players within the locker room that are ready to move forward, that are tired of seeing what we've seen, that are tired of seeing Kyle Shanahan clearly limiting what he's willing to do within this offense, clearly sending messages to the organization, to the fan base, that he does not trust the arm talent, the decision-making, the processing of his starting quarterback, and then some refusal to consider the idea of making the shift. It's frustrating to me, but with the pendulum question, I suppose what you have to debate is, when are there fewer people calling for Jimmy than there are doubters in going forward with Trey? This game that we just got through on Sunday night seemed very reminiscent to me of the type of attitude that fans took on after the loss to Seattle that ended up being the catalyst for firing Jim Harbaugh, the Thanksgiving game. It very much felt like that. So I would not be surprised if this is the pendulum point, if this isn't the time where more players are saying, you know what? It's time to move on. It's time to see what we've got.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the second question I have is, I mean, it might be a little bit rhetorical, but you can answer it anyways. Is Shanahan capable of learning and growing? And here's two pivotal points that I look at in his career. One, he loses a Super Bowl in Atlanta as the offensive coordinator, and then he comes to San Francisco, gets in the Super Bowl, and basically makes the same exact mistake. That's one. Number two, they take a mobile quarterback in RG3, they run him into the ground, okay, ruin his career really before it gets started, and then the moment he has a chance to play Trey, he does the exact same thing, hurts the kid, first start. That's twice now. He makes major mistakes with franchise quarterbacks, which are the most important players you have, And in the biggest games of his careers, he's made the same mistakes. Is this guy really incapable of learning and growing and making those changes? Because if he cannot adjust and learn from mistakes made, I mean, my gosh, this guy, he can't be the guy anymore. He just can't.
I don't know if I can say entirely that he's incapable of learning from his past mistakes, but what I will say is, regardless of whether he's learned from them, the stubborn side to his nature has in some way prohibited him from actually taking the action steps that's needed. So if he's learned anything from it, he's yet to implement anything from what he's learned. And I think from what we have learned of Kyle Shanahan, it's not that far fetched to say that yes, his stubborn nature has gotten in the way of him turning the tide, of him actually making some progress as a head coach. You can see that stubbornness come through in some of the answers that he continually has in the press conferences as he goes in front of the media.
Oh my God. I don't know. I'm so frustrated. And again, it's crazy that I'll go back to the post on Twitter with the play. Again, great play. But everybody's looking at the micro and saying, see, Jimmy, he's missing the macro is Shanahan continues to play Jimmy despite all the deficiencies he has. And at some point, those micro issues are caused because of the macro issues. So while that one individual play was certainly on Jimmy, the overarching theme is Kyle needs to start taking accountability for what the hell's going on. And I know he did it a little bit in yesterday's press conference, but it was only, in my opinion, because it was teed up to him. They basically flat out asked the question, hey, this is what's going on. What is your opinion? Everybody's blaming you. What do you say? Nobody in their right mind, if he found a way to weasel out of that without taking any accountability, then at that point, you got to be fired on the spot.
It is very true. I mean, he was definitely painted into a corner there in the press conference, and his response this week about starting Jimmy once again is staggering to me. But I go through the other rookies that he's not playing, and I'm almost equally as flabbergasted about that. I know that you specifically mentioned Banks as one that you're not surprised to see out there, but quite honestly, with what I'm looking at on tape from Daniel Brunskill, at this point, I have to say, why not? And with Mitchell versus Sermon, yes, it's very clear that Mitchell is the better of the two prospects at this point in time. But again, I have to question, why not spell his legs? I mean, when you look at the breakdown of carries yesterday, with Mitchell coming out with 9 carries in the first quarter, that was setting up ideally to work Sermon in there and to have a massive load of carries for your 2 running backs instead of running one into the ground or getting away from it in the way that he did. I just am... This really worries me, right? Because, and I'll tell you why, and this is the closing point on the rookies playing or not. What Shanahan is telling us here is that he's basically not going to do this until he feels like the 49ers are out of contention. And in this year's playoff setup, the 49ers will not be mathematically eliminated from the playoffs for a very long time. And my greatest fear around this belief in not playing the rookies because it wouldn't give us the best chance to win. First of all, I call BS on that because the players that are in front of them in some cases, like Jimmy G, like Daniel Brunskill, are not performing at this point in time. So it's fair to question how much worse it could get. But my bigger point here is much like what they did in 2020 in chasing relevancy. In 2020, the 49ers spent valuable cap dollars on better Band-Aid players that they thought would be able to fill in when they first started to get injured. And they continued the pursuit of that to the detriment of 2021. They spent valuable dollars that could have been spent on free agents this time around, that could have added another cornerback in the cornerback room, that could have added additional players this year. My fear is if we go until we're mathematically eliminated, does that stunt the growth of all these rookies headed into 2022, where it seems like the 49ers may actually be back in competition?
Yeah, what's interesting to me is, and I was kind of this assumption as well, but as you were talking through it, I kind of walked myself back, and I think the thought is, well, I mean, we know how bad Brunskill and Compton are. So, I mean, how bad does that make Aaron Banks if he can't even suit up?
Right?
That's the thought, right? But here's the problem with that. Then we can also make that same assumption with Trey because we see how bad Jimmy is. So if Trey had not played, we could make that assumption. The problem is Trey has played, and Trey's played better than Jimmy. So we know what Trey looks like, and we know how good Trey is. We don't know the same thing with Banks, so we're making that assumption. But I don't necessarily buy that it's true. Banks may be the better player at this point.
It's fair to question it. And your logic there is sound in looking at Trey and in looking at the way in which Shanahan has viewed Trey. If you only looked at the way in which Shanahan has viewed Trey, you would think, well, Trey must suck. But we've seen Trey play, and we've seen that actually is pretty exciting. So
both Treys, by the way, because Trey Sermon also has played very well.
Yes, Sermon as well. No doubt about it. I mean, averaged, 5 yards a carry in that game that he was in?
Right.
Last question before we transition off this topic is Lance playing sporadically? So if what we see going forward is closer to what we saw to start the season in the first game and a half, where you actually, in the first game, specifically against Detroit, where you see Lance get some snaps, is that enough to give the 49ers team the spark that they need on offense?
I mean, it could. It's a temporary spark. Like, I look at the Lions, but I also really look at that Green Bay game, right, where they could not put up any points. They brought him down in on 4th and goal, and he was able to punch it in the end zone. Mm-hmm. That gave him a little bit of a spark. And sure, it definitely lifted him for the rest of that game potentially, but it's not enough, man. This team, I know we're going to get into it later, but this team is not good enough. They need a spark all game long.
Don't worry about hitting on later topics, man. We'll just get repetitive on it. People need to hear this stuff, and it won't sink in until we repeat it 7 times. I have studied enough about adult human learning theory to know that. We need to drive these points home for 49ers. I need to hear these points driven home time and time again because I need to realize it. All right, I'm going to go to a comment here because Gizmo writes in an interesting one here. He says, at Rob Schuh, we can't draw any conclusions from Sunday's Mud Bowl. Bad weather is an equalizer. We need to chill and see how the next few games play out. We don't quit until eliminated. Gizmo, I got to respond to that in pieces a little bit. I disagree with the premise that we can't draw any conclusions from the Mud Bowl. I agree wholeheartedly that bad weather is an equalizer. It certainly helped the Colts in that with the injured secondary that they have, it allowed the 49ers a chance. It took away the 49ers. Sorry, I'm trying to take off a banner, and I can't do 2 things at once. Anytime I try to multi-process, I lose my train of thought. But the 49ers were then equalized and not being able to take the shots downfield by the weather. So that is a bit of an equalizer. And I do agree that after we vented about our frustration with where the 49ers are, it's probably best to chill and see what happens over the next couple of games. Nothing needs to be done this week. And I definitely agree with the fact that as a member of the 49er faithful, I don't quit on this team. I watch every single game. If I go to a game, I don't leave before the last whistle. I don't care how much the Niners are down. And that has been a good thing in some of the games I've been at. I was there when the Niners came back against the New York Giants in the playoffs, down 42 to something. And I stayed through the game because I don't leave. I don't quit. But going back to the first point, I think we're putting the blinders on if we don't draw conclusions from this game. If we don't start to criticize based on what we're seeing on the field, it's just too inconsistent regardless of weather.
Yeah, listen, this team was coming off of a bye week, okay? They had no problem scoring, not only on that first drive, but in the fourth quarter, they put together that swift drive where they were able to go down and score very quickly in a much-needed situation. This team went long periods without even getting a first down. This is something that is not new. They've scored the first drive. They've put up minimal points in a first half. This is everything that we've seen all season long, unfortunately. I think the conclusion that we can draw is we saw exactly what we've always seen, and the fact that we saw it after a bye week is very disheartening. And I'm going to throw up one more point. You talk about bad weather being an equalizer. I agree. If you've got a high-powered offense, it can slow them down. The 49ers do not have a high-powered offense. It should have been an equalizer for the defense to help them out, and at times it was. But here's the other thing. Let's not forget that the Colts are a dome team. This was a dome team that traveled outdoors in a mud bowl and out-executed you. That's what I take from this game.
And that ain't pretty. Getting back to what you said just a moment ago, the conversation needs to be had about the 49ers and whether they are, in fact, a talented team, whether they are, in fact, a good team, and really, what the hell do we mean when we say they're talented or they're good? What is the difference? So, Jesse, let me start by saying that I still believe that the 49ers are a talented team. Now, I have to say that and admit at the same time, I may have some blinders on. I go into this with optimism. But what do we really mean when we talk about being talented versus being a good team? To me, it's about the 49ers. While I still believe them to have talent on this team, I still believe them to be able to turn the tide to some respect. Sitting at 2-4, going into week 8, I have to say definitively, as of right now, the 49ers are not a good team.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the team is talented, right? Because they have blue chip players. Let's go through them real quick.
Yep.
They have Kittle. They have
Check.
Bosa. They have Warner. They have Debo. They have Trent Williams. Those are 5 blue chip, high level players right there. Then you've got some really good secondary players from Jimmy Ward, Jaquiski Tart. We could talk about
Juice.
Ayuk, Juice. Like, there are some good secondary pieces there. Tomlinson, I would throw into that loop.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
DJ Jones, Armstead, Ford. You have a ton of talent on this team. Talent is not the problem with San Francisco. They are not a good team. They are not a sound decision-making team, and they are not a well-coached team. That is the issue with the San Francisco 49ers. Talent is not the issue. This is easily a top 10 talent team in the NFL. I'd argue top 7 when everything is right. Maybe even top 5. Let's be real. You go top to bottom. Even the special teams has some talent. So, no, talent is not an issue with this team. The fact that they're probably not going to make the playoffs has nothing to do with the talent base.
No, I have to agree with you there. And it passes the eye test. You see the flashes of greatness. You see when everything clicks and everything is firing on all cylinders. They just cannot maintain it for any considerable period of time. It reminds me of an old 69 GTO that I used to have. It had this 455 in it, and it would foul plugs like nobody's business. And you'd fire it up, and when it was running on all cylinders, man, that thing purred, it rumbled, and it made you feel fantastic. But that thing was misfiring, and just many a time because you couldn't keep it running at the highest level. And that is the feel of the San Francisco 49ers. And much like I was not a master mechanic back when I was 16 and couldn't keep it running at the highest level, Kyle seems to not have the answers from a coaching perspective to keep this team operating at a high level for any period of time consistently. It is very frustrating to watch the 49ers be unable to sustain the type of success that we've seen in flashes.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what's crazy? This season is driving 49er fans nuts because they are talented enough and they're just not executing. How would it feel to have been a Cowboys fan for the last 7 years? I got to imagine this is everything that they've gone through. You've got the talent. You've got the quarterback, the running back, the receivers, the offensive line is stacked. You've got players in the secondary and along the defensive line. They are a favorite to win an easy division. And then they never come through because they can't execute. They're not well coached. I feel like the Dallas Cowboys and their fans must have felt really up until this year for about a 7-year stretch.
It's wild. Black Razor comes in here saying talented team is ability, right? And the 49ers are talented. They do have the ability. The good team is when you execute properly. And that is clearly not happening with the San Francisco 49ers. And again, I have to go back and look at the buck stops here with Kyle Shanahan at the top of the chart. That's who I go to when I look for answers. So that naturally transitions a bit into our next topic, which
Can I say something real quick?
Absolutely.
I think the old saying goes, hard work beats talent every day of the week, but nothing beats talent that works hard. The 49ers are the talented team that are simply being outworked. And if they would work as hard as some of the opponents, they would be a very, very good team. That's where you get Super Bowl caliber teams like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, maybe the Cardinals, some of those other teams where there's plenty of talent, but they're also outworking everybody. They're out executing and they simply want it more. That's what the 49ers are lacking. That leadership, that heart, it's just not there right now.
Well said, Jesse. Well said indeed. So let's answer the question around Kyle Shanahan. From what you're seeing and what I saw in the post-game presser, Kyle was very soft-spoken. I mean, many of the beat reporters actually called out the fact that they had trouble hearing him in that presser because he was, in fact, beaten down at that point. He was lacking fire, seemed to lack the emotion. The ego even was missing from that presser. So in your mind, with what you're seeing from Kyle Shanahan and what you heard of the press call that happened today, do you believe Kyle is merely humbled at this point, or is he defeated and a bit checked out at the moment?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both, right? I think he's defeated. I don't think he's checked out. I just think he doesn't have the answers, quite frankly. I don't think he has that leadership quality, that leadership capability to fight his way out of this. And, it's like the bucket of crabs, right? When you start to boil the water, they all just like pull each other down instead of like working together to get out. They're constantly fighting to one up each other and save themselves. That's what I feel like this team is right now. That's what I feel like it is from the leadership standpoint. Kyle's grasping at straws. He has zero answers because, quite frankly, he's never put together multiple winning and good quality seasons as an offensive coordinator or a head coach. Right now, he doesn't have any of the answers because he's looking at it going, well, hold on. We have all the talent. I mean, the talent we had in 2019, this matches it on paper. Why aren't we winning? Why aren't we executing? And I think one of the things that 49er fans overlooked is we talk about the Buckner situation, right? That obviously came up a lot this week because you lost out on the leadership of Buckner. But really, this team from a leadership standpoint had a mass exodus after 2019. You had Staley. You had Buckner. You've now lost Saleh. You've lost Sherman. Really, the leadership is gone off this team. So what are you going to do about it? As the leader, as the front man of this organization, you relied on a coalition of guys to do your work for you. Now you actually have to be the leader. And now that that's the case, I don't see that leadership.
I don't either. And I'll take it one step forward that some of the pump up guys who are essential in a game like football, where you're literally putting your life on the line on every play. Let's just be real about that. These men are going out there and throwing themselves at one another at such speeds and such velocity that literally it could end their career on any given play. It's why you don't see tanking in the NFL. That wouldn't be tolerated, right? Yeah, you can play some young rookies, but there's no tanking like in baseball or basketball because these people are putting their livelihoods, their lives on the line every snap. They lost not only the vocal leaders, not only the heady leaders, they lost those pump up guys in KB, Kendrick Bourne, right? That was a huge loss not to have him back. Quan Alexander was a fiery guy for the defense. And I just don't get the sense, even in losing Saleh, while you lost his play calling, his intellectual side, you lost his fire on the sideline as well. And Kyle seems to have somehow calmed down on the sidelines. As things have gotten worse, he's become less animated. You're seeing less fire from him. It's frustrating on many levels. And again, it leaves me almost speechless as far as where we are at right now. Ricardo, probably jokingly, but God knows if it's true or not, says LaFleur had the answers. Well, he's in New York now. Cassidy thinking that defenses have figured out Kyle. The only thing I would say to that is it's frustrating to watch what he does so well in the counter misdirection runs that started that game. And then he just gets away from it. You see it working. You see the Colts struggling with it. You see Darius Leonard in the presser after the game call out the fact that the Colts defense was struggling with what the 49ers were doing. And he was just glad that the 49ers decided to abandon that.
This is the second time this has happened, Rob. Remember after the Super Bowl, Frank Clark, Tyrann Mathieu came out and said, we wanted them to do exactly what they did. They got away from the running game. They played right into our hands. That's what we had hoped would happen. They did us a favor. Now you saw it again last night where Kyle Shanahan is doing favors for the other team. The other team is going, we don't know what the hell's going on. Thank you so much for taking away what we couldn't figure out. What is happening? Like, that should never happen. That should never happen. You've got multiple people. This week, you had Bennett coming out and calling your quarterback a B. Yeah. By the way, you had Whitner echo those same sentiments. Now, he did it professionally because he covers the 49ers, but he came out and said the way that Garoppolo made excuses after that calf injury and after that game is unacceptable. That's basically him saying Jimmy is a B. That's exactly what he's saying. You have so many outsiders who have been in these locker rooms saying all of these things. And you even had Cowherd come out yesterday and tweet, I don't know about you. I know it's sacrilegious to point to Kyle Shanahan and say he's not good, but does this look like a well-coached team to you? That is somebody who's worked with John Lynch and has always been in the corner of Kyle Shanahan. The sky is falling more than people want to admit that it is.
100%. The shift in the national media today, Jesse, was wild. Freaking wild, dude. It was as if everybody got the memo, like, oh, no, I hadn't really watched the first 6 games. This is what the Niner faithful are so upset about. Like, this is the inconsistent play that has been happening. This is what I've been missing when I just saw the box score or I just saw the highlights from the game. No, now you've watched an entire game. You've seen the product on the field. You've seen Kyle getting back to the checked out thing at this point, it's wild to me after what we saw yesterday that he could believe he still believes that Jimmy gives the 49ers the best chance going forward to win games. So I have to ask, is there something that Kyle believes he's protecting Trey Lance at this point? Or is it back to this idea of really not having the answers this season? Do you assume positive intent here? Or are you more on the side of, no, Kyle just literally is scrambling at this point and is afraid to go to the rookie because that would put him in even more of a pickle?
To me, I just feel like it's Kyle being Kyle. It's Kyle being stubborn and saying, well, listen, I've said that Jimmy gives us the best chance to win. I've said there's no quarterback controversy. Even after the worst game he's had, arguably, as a 49er, I am not going to change my mind. We are still fighting for the playoffs. And if we're fighting for the playoffs, we are playing our starters. Jimmy is a starter. That's what we're doing. Because the moment he says that we still have a chance for the playoffs, yet I'm going with Trey, is the moment he puts himself at risk to be wrong and be a little bit vulnerable. And I don't think that he has that in him. I really don't. And humility to me is one of those things, right? I feel like a lot of people want to talk down when somebody changes their mind after more information is presented to them. I actually look at that as a strength. If you are willing to say, I was wrong, I've now seen more facts and I'm willing to change my mind, that to me is a strength, and that's how you get ahead. Shanahan seems to have an outright refusal to do just that.
It's a great call out. It literally is the definition of the scientific method, right? You come up with a hypothesis, you come up with what you believe to be true. We will be successful on misdirection, outside zone runs. Then you execute that plan and get the information, the input of was it successful or not. And then based on that information, you change the original hypothesis or confirm the hypothesis. So to your point, yes, you should applaud people who take in new information and change their opinion, because that's how new opinions should be formed, based on new facts that have been laid out. And I'll tell you what, Niner faithful, after what I saw on the field Sunday night, that was a new set of facts that I have to consider, because at this point in time, it seems like madness to me not to switch the starters this week, assuming Trey is healthy. Now, I understand if Kyle is sort of hedging against the fact that Trey's injury is more than he let on to begin with. The knee sprain hasn't quite healed up. But to me, that would be really the only reason that you're not making this shift, to see if you can't add some excitement to this offense and get it going, man.
Yeah, I also think, let's be clear about this. I know there was a lot of speculation of, were these guys really injured? Was Kyle playing chess and bringing a guy out and not doing this or not doing that? I think all the questions have been answered. I don't think he's savvy enough to do that, because if there's ever a week that you're going to stick with Jimmy G and not play Trey Lance, this is the week that you say, look, he's still hurt. He's got no chance to play. Jimmy's our starter. He's always been our starter. And we don't have an alternate player, so that Jimmy's our guy. No, instead he says, Jimmy's our guy. Yeah, Trey's in a practice on Wednesday. We're good.
It's wild. Eric calls out that what is the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. I don't know if I expect a different result on Sunday, and that is saying something against a wildly inconsistent Bears team. All right, headed up to the next interesting topic of panic discussion here on this Monday night episode. Hotter seat, John or Kyle? Honestly, at this point in time, I waver back and forth a bit, in that I find it hard to decide whether it's a talent issue or an execution issue. As talented as this team is, and we did just go through a list of the talent that is on this roster, it's also very easy to go through and point out on amazing misses that they have made throughout the lifetime of this duo in John and Kyle. And I tend to think, or at least John's statements have led me to believe, that most of those decisions should fall on him. Even if he's listening to Kyle and taking input from his head coach with what he stated definitively in this offseason, the buck stops with him when it comes to roster building. He is in charge of the draft. He is in charge of free agent signings. He certainly was the last man to execute the trade of DeForest Buckner. What do you see as the party to assign greater blame to at this point in time for the 49er faithful?
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, from us, the hotter seat should absolutely be Kyle, period, point blank. And we talk about leadership and how you put the onus on you, and you say it's my fault, me. You never say we. You always say I when you're taking blame and you're being asked those questions. John Lynch is just savvy. That's what he's doing right there. Now, I'm not saying he's absolved of everything,
no,
and that he's got no part in it. That's not what I'm saying. But he's just doing what a leader should do. At the end of the day, realistically, though, John is the one that is absolutely on the hottest of hot seats, because if Kyle leaves, he was handpicked by Kyle, which means John is out. And guess what? I'm pretty sure that when push comes to shove and you have the meetings right before the offseason where you sit down with the owner, you explain what the future looks like, you talk about it during the exit interviews, these guys are going to be going tit for tat behind closed doors, and Kyle 100% is going to look at York and say, listen, I just had to redshirt basically this whole draft class. take with that what you will, but this team was ready to win this year. I still fully believe that. We had some injuries. We didn't have the proper depth. And, the wheels fell off the wagon. But I feel like this team not only was ready to win this year, but I think the team is more ready to win next year. And I'm the guy to lead it. I just don't know if we have the guy in place to get me the pieces. That's how that conversation is most likely going to go.
Yeah.
Somebody's certainly getting fired at the end of the season. I think that is almost beyond a doubt at this point, and it's going to be John.
There are very few scenarios that end with a happy ending for the 49ers this season, right? If you run the simulator 1,000 times, there's maybe 3 times out of that 1,000 where it ends well for the 49ers this season. And I'm not saying that they can't. This is the type of team that if they put together a long winning streak, they would be the matchup that you wouldn't want to see in the wild card round, right? That because they're a talented team. If they get their shit together, if they can actually look like a team for 60 minutes of football, if they can actually execute on a weekly basis, they could be that team to beat. I don't think that that's a strong possibility at this point. It would take a lot of things going their way. I also would agree with the sentiment that if I'm assigning portions of blame out here, I'm lumping more on Kyle's plate, because I do think that on some level, John Lynch is not a figurehead, but also not in complete control. He's not doing many of these major moves without Kyle Shanahan's explicit sign off on what they're doing. And therefore, yeah, I think Kyle deserves a bit more of the blame if we're doling it out. But at the end of the year, if I'm looking at both these candidates and one has to answer for the shortcomings, I'd be happier with Lynch answering for it. Because, and I tweeted this out, and I mean it to this point, what I saw in that first drive of what the 49ers were able to do with misdirection in the run game, that is the genius of Shanahan. It jumps off the page when it's working well. And you can say that all the other flaws greatly outweigh it, and I'd have a hard time arguing that to this point. To this point, yes, in fact, his character flaws outweigh the genius. And that's saying something, because I think the genius is palpable. But my fear is that it's correctable, that he can, in fact, grow and will, in fact, grow, and then we'll watch him with some other organization. And I know in saying that it's a bit irrational to allow fear of what may be, fear of Jed blowing the next head coaching candidate, fear of him going on and having some success with another organization. But to me, it is that potential of Kyle that keeps me salivating, that keeps me coming back for more abuse over and over and over again. And that cues up Fable's comment here of, Rob, am I insane for watching the 49ers over and over and over and expecting us to win? Yes, the definition of insanity, but I'm right there with you, my friend Fable. It's a situation where you would think someone would have to answer for this. I also tweeted last night that this is the type of game in years past Jed would have angry tweeted about. Jed would have absolutely said something along the lines of this being unacceptable 49ers football and we will do better, and that type of a tweet. It felt like that kind of game to me.
I'll say this, and I don't think it's going to happen because I think Chicago's really that bad. If they lose to Chicago, I'm calling it right now, somebody's getting fired within 48 hours of that game. And I'm not saying necessarily Kyle or John, but a position coach, somebody is losing their job after that game. Somebody will be a scapegoat. The heads will start rolling. There is no way that they lose to Chicago without some sort of change. That's my bold prediction. Now, it's only bold if they lose to Chicago. They shouldn't lose to Chicago. But also, the 49ers aren't a good team. If the 49ers were a good team, this is a game that good teams go out and win handily. I am not sold that the 49ers can do just that. I don't think Justin Fields is very good. I don't think Nagy's very good. I think this game is an easy one if you're a solid team, but the 49ers haven't shown to be that.
Right. That's a real question about this 49ers team. Josh G says both are on the hot seat, but Kyle just doesn't care anymore, unlike John. I think that there's a large percentage of the 49ers fan base that are starting to feel this way, that are starting to be really, really irritated with Coach Shanahan because of the way in which he interacts with the press and how that comes across. And I agree with the last point that you just made, that what you will see from 49er faithful, from the national media, even from the local reporters, and particularly from those of us in the YouTube space, because of the fandom that surrounds the interaction, the dialogue, you will see exponential growth in the panic that happens. It won't just be a continual, gradual. No, if we lose to the Chicago Bears next week, 49er faithful will collectively lose it. I mean, on a level that is Jim Tom Sula bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. There was a really good comment by, there's actually a couple of them. Hold on a second. Let's see.
Ooh, call them out. I'll throw them up. You tell me the timestamp.
So yeah, 9:49. Gavin, listen, I love Gavin, by the way, but he says Nagy sucks.
Notorious GAV, we'll call that out.
So this is funny because this right here is a comment that all 49er fans, it's 2 down. He says Nagy sucks. All 49er fans have this same thought. Here's the difference. Nagy has a better record than Shanahan does. Oof. And Nagy, unlike Shanahan, is not afraid to have the gall to play his rookie quarterback. Despite him not playing well, he's sticking with him and letting the kid work through all of the issues. That is the difference. So if Nagy sucks, we have to look in the mirror about our own head coach, because I'm not sure what makes Shanahan any better than Nagy.
Yeah, listen, Kyle, either he made one of 2 mistakes. Either he should actively be playing his rookie quarterback right now, or he should have been a bit more accurate in his own belief of where we were at the beginning of the season, right? I mean, for me, the Matt Nagy situation works out because he came in with the proper expectations. We have sort of a bridge quarterback coming in here, but the future is very clear. We are going forward with Justin Fields. We're not a great team. Shanahan and Lynch tried to sell this message that we were both a great team now and a team that was going to develop a superstar for the future. And I feel as a fan that I've been sold that bag of goods, that bill of goods. And it's the expectations. It's the difference between expectations and reality. That delta is what leaves me feeling so dirty at this point in the season so far.
They tried to sell us snake oil and blinker fluid, and we bought it, Rob. We bought it.
Blinker fluid, indeed. Time to change that blinker fluid. Well, this one's sort of out of left field for me, but it's one that comes to me as a topic of conversation. Shanahan clearly has too much on his plate. And I say clearly because you look at him challenging that play on the field Sunday night. He's attempting to look at his play sheet. What's coming up next? Where am I at? What am I having success with? Oh, there's a fumble on the field. I can't hear out of my headset. Well, I'll just throw the challenge flag and then attempt to pick it up. And it is the type of thing that's a bit embarrassing, if you're honest about it. I think that most people saw that as pretty foolish. Myself, my wife, we were watching the game together. Neither one of us had any clue what he saw that may have caused him to throw that challenge flag. At first, I thought, well, maybe he was confused that he thought that it was fumbled before the line to gain, and then you can't advance a fumble. It has to be the original ball carrier that gets it back in order to advance it. But when you look at the replay, he's a solid 2.5 yards beyond the line to gain before he fumbles. So it's hard to imagine that Kyle thought it was not a first down. And it's those types of things that lead you to believe he's overwhelmed as a head coach. So my question is, would it behoove Kyle to give up the play calling duties? Clearly, he's still great at designing the plays, but I don't know that you can say that he's been great at dialing up when to call them this year.
Yeah, listen, and that's not the first time. Against Green Bay, the reason he didn't go for it on 4th down at the 50 when they were down 10-0 is he thought they had lost a bit of yardage to play prior.
He thought it was 4th and 2.
Right. So this is multiple times without even realizing it. He's admitting that he's in over his head and that he's got too much on his plate. Yeah, I would love for McDaniel to take over the play calling. Maybe even Kyle says, listen, I'm going to come up. We're going to script the first 15 plays together. here's my situations. I've got a sheet for you that these are the plays that we call in third and medium, third and long. These are the plays that we call, you know what I mean? Like spells it out for him, but just trusts him to do what he needs to do. Or he goes to him and says, listen, I'm going to continue to call the plays. I need you to be my Grant Cohn, my quality control coach. Tell me the down and distances. Tell me when I should go for it. Make sure that you're managing the clock for me. You've got full to go out and do these things. So I fear that Kyle's going to continue to do what he's always done. And he'll continue to say, well, I'll just do it. Like, I don't trust anybody else. I'll just do it. I don't trust anybody else. I'll just do it. Can't do that.
Kyle Shanahan should go and watch. There's a 3+ minute video out there that is John Harbaugh talking about servant leadership. If the Niner faithful are watching this and you want to see the fundamentals of solid servant leadership, go watch the video. Google it. John Harbaugh, servant leadership. He talks about things like empowering those people that work for you. The first question always being, hey, do you have a good idea? Is there something that you want to bring to the table? And you can watch it on the field when John Harbaugh knows he's going to go for it on 4th and short, but he reaches out to Lamar on the field and says, hey, you want to go for it? Right? He gets the buy-in of his player in saying, yeah, coach, let's go for it. Now, all of a sudden, Lamar's going to sell out on that run around the edge, right? He is absolutely going to do everything in his power to get that first down because you've empowered him. And the same with your coordinators and your assistant coaches. When you empower them, it encourages them to take the next step, to take ownership, to go above and beyond. What it appears to me, as someone who's studied organizational leadership for a significant portion of my adult life, is you see Kyle taking that away from people. You see him enforcing a very strict way of doing things to where someone asked Mike McDaniel prior to the season, hey, Mike, are you going to be taking over play calling duties? And it was laughable to Mike McDaniel that would even be an option, that he would call plays. Why would I? Right? Well, had you a head coach that were empowering you, you might feel like you were capable of calling those plays. Yeah. Can you still powwow with Shanahan? Absolutely. You script up those initial play calls. But someone needs to take control within this organization, whether it is providing support to Kyle in those other areas that he's struggling with, such that when he's on the field, he can focus more on the play calling, or taking the play calling duties away from him. And I'll be honest, I never thought I would suggest that coming into this season with what my opinion was of Kyle Shanahan. But in looking at the way he's been calling plays, I don't see any harm in taking it away from him. It doesn't stop him from being able to draw up and design phenomenal plays. It just puts it in someone else's hands to say, here's what we're doing well this game. Here's what we're going to stick with. Here's what we're going to try next. Because Kyle's just been getting too damn cute this entire season.
Not only does Nagy have a better winning record, not only does Nagy have the decision-making and the wherewithal to play his rookie quarterback, Nagy also turned over the play calling because he felt like it was too much on his plate. That is 3 strikes against Kyle. Kyle is not a better coach than Nagy. I'm sorry.
I'm telling you, the fans are feeling this way. Apollo, hey, Jed York, take the draft and personnel responsibilities from crappy Kyle Shanahan and fire Lynch. Find a real GM or you will hear from thousands of discontent 49ers fan base.
It'll never
happen. I do not actually discount this fact that that's where 49ers fans are. I am an emotionally level-headed individual, and I am enraged after where we are this week. I can only imagine those of you out there, Niner faithful, who are not quite so reasonable at most times, are probably losing it altogether.
I agree that 49er fans probably are at that point. What I'm saying will never happen is that scenario where you take away the voice of Shanahan and allow him to be just the coach, and he gets his hands out of the cookie jar. It's too late for that. You've already given him that power. The moment that you do that is the moment that it's over for Shanahan. And 49er fans are scared to death to get rid of Kyle because they think he's going to land on his feet. Listen, stop thinking that's going to happen. Expect it to happen. Here's what I will say. Because the next place he goes, they will not be as desperate. They will not give him full power. And Kyle can focus on doing what Kyle has done well, and that is be a play caller, and he will learn. Well, I would hope he would learn from the situations he's had here and be a better coach because of it. Expect that he falls forward, but that's okay. That doesn't mean that he's ever going to be successful here, because you cannot take that power away from him. And while he has full control, Kyle, the GM, is absolutely hurting Kyle, the coach, every time he makes a personnel decision.
It's so true. And the idea that, yes, expect he will, in fact, take the next step going forward, whether it is, in fact, just personal accountability, looking at his career with the San Francisco 49ers, being humbled by being let go at some point. But to your point, certainly you would think the next organization that takes him on will attempt to address these issues by setting up his contractual agreement in that way to say, hey, Kyle, we love what you do in certain aspects in designing that offense, and we're not crazy about these other things, right? And it would be in the structure of the deal. They wouldn't explicitly say these things to Kyle, but it's much harder for the 49ers to try and take them away. You wouldn't think Shanahan would be okay with that. You would think Shanahan might, in fact, choose to move on to the next destination where he felt like he would get the respect that he wanted at that point. So if we admit to ourselves that the 49ers are lacking some leadership up at the top, we're lacking the leadership from our head coach, we're not getting it from the organization as a whole, let's look at the rest of the leadership levels. And this came up for me in listening to what Joe Staley said in his press conference afterwards, on the Niner broadcast afterward. He touched on the fact that the comments about his retirement and his conversation with DeForest Buckner. So Joe Staley, and I'm paraphrasing here, says, I decided with my family that we were going to retire, and I felt that it was my obligation as the senior most leader on this team to reach out to the person I'm going to hand the reins to. And who was that individual? DeForest Buckner. So he calls up Buck. He says, hey, Buck, I got some bad news, health concerns. I'm moving on. And what's Buck's response? Hey, Joe, it hasn't been released yet, but I've been traded. I'm not with the 49ers anymore. And Joe loses it a bit, right? Joe, even now in retelling it, talks about how he was so caught off guard from that. And it makes me wonder where we have the leadership within this organization, because I'm not seeing it at the top of the organization with Kyle Shanahan. In his post-game presser, he said this exact line: we struggled to throw and catch more than they did. That's the type of leadership that we got in answer to one of the worst losses of the season. That's it. So that's what he had to tell the fan base. Bosa, when I look to leaders on the defense, I just can't get past this image. He comes in with his backpack on. He just strikes me as a hired gun, right? He is absolutely lethal at what he does. He reminds me very much of Deion Sanders in 1994, where I just don't know how bought into the team he is. I don't know what to expect from him, but I don't see a very vocal leader, and I don't see it elsewhere on the defensive side of the ball.
He even in that little snippet where he was up there, he even turned it to Fred Warner. He's like, yeah, right. Fred gets us in these positions. I trust Fred. No matter what's going on after we give up a big play, Fred knows what's going on, and he'll get us in the right spot. So he even deferred it to Fred.
Yeah. And while I love Fred Warner, and I do think he is growing into that role, it seems too much for him at this point to put it all on his plate. He's also the quarterback of the defense. He just got paid, so fans are looking to him. That's too much to put on any one player. It's got to be spread around a bit. On the offensive side of the ball, it can't be Jimmy G. You've cut him off at the knees from being a leader. What are you going to make a fullback really the leader of the locker room? Is it Kittle? But he's injured for too many games to really be there, and is more of the joker / rah-rah guy. So I just see a void of leadership on this team, and it makes the decision to move on from DeForest Buckner that much more painful, and having to relive it during this loss this week exponentially so.
Yeah, they've literally lost every leader on this team, and quite frankly, we know that it's Warner, because he says he says me. He's not afraid to call people out.
He does take a lot of personal accountability.
Quite frankly, Lance is the only other player that also does that, by the way. Lance also, after the loss, against Arizona. And listen, he hasn't earned it enough yet, but with time, I feel like he would take the reins and be that leader, because he comes out after an Arizona game, his very first time starting, and talks about all the areas that he needs to improve in. That's what leaders do. And
Yes.
the fact that the 21-year-old gets it and the 44-year-old doesn't, however old Shanahan is, that's concerning.
Very concerning. Transitions beautifully into our next topic, which is around Trey Lance. And is Lance that guy? So you talked about the leadership qualities, and I think that they are tangible. I think that they're visible. As a fellow 49er faithful, I see what you're talking about there. I see the guy in the press conference that it's almost shocking to you that he's 21 years old. You look at him very much like how Mike McGlinchey comes across in a press conference, but feeling a bit more secure in the physical talents on the field when it comes to Trey Lance. But this came up because of a statement Rich Eisen made on his program today. So for those of you that didn't see last week, Rich Eisen was asked about whether Kyle Shanahan should be on the hot seat, and he laughed it off. I mean, it was very humorous to him. Well, he wasn't laughing this time around, right? It got a lot more serious after what we all saw Sunday night. But he did still say, no, he should not be on the hot seat at this particular moment. And I tend to agree with that to some extent because, again, I see the potential there. But what he says then specifically is that clearly Shanahan needs better quarterback play. Calls that out very specifically. Needs better quarterback play. But the reason why we should give Kyle another year at a minimum is that he's identified that next quarterback, right? He has identified Lance to be that guy. So my question to you is, do you agree? Do you think that that is the answer for Kyle, that he has in fact found that guy in Lance, and that Kyle is going to successfully pour enough into developing Lance that this is the solution going forward?
I have no question whether Lance is that guy. I know Lance is that guy. I've been saying Lance is that guy, and I'm going to stand behind Lance being that guy.
Yeah, you have a track record of success in talking about Trey Lance.
However, I'm not sure that Shanahan is that guy to get the best out of Lance. And that is where my concern is, because I feel like there's this tightrope that's being walked right now. Okay. You have about, they say with kids, the point in life that you're the most moldable is around that 5-year-old age, right? That's the age where you really start to put things together. You start to pick up on things. That's where a big portion, like between 5 and 7, that your life is really molded in those years. I would say that same thing goes for rookie quarterbacks. You have about a 3-year window of moldability, okay? And if the first 2 years of that window are molded by a guy that does not know how to mold you, then that gives me a lot of concern. Because here's what can happen. If Kyle is not the right guy and he's guaranteed 1 more year, then that means he is putting 2/3 of that moldability, taking that and throwing it out the window.
Yep.
And then we have to trust that York can bring in the right guy in year 3 to get the best out of Trey. I'm not sure that that's going to happen. That's what concerns me. Now, best case scenario, Shanahan is that right guy. He figures it out. He really is behind Trey, and he has a plan going into next season to mold him. I just am not confident in that. What has he done to give me confidence that he's going to put forth that effort and know how to develop this kid? That's what concerns me.
Yeah, the evidence isn't there. I've gone back repeatedly and looked at, okay, what's Kyle Shanahan's track record of developing rookie quarterbacks, specifically rookie quarterbacks? Because if you look at veteran quarterbacks, you could point to Matt Schaub. He was with Matt Schaub for 3 years, but Matt Schaub was in his 4th NFL season, his first season with Kyle Shanahan. So he was not a rookie. He had a 3-year contract with Atlanta where he got to get his feet wet within the NFL. Then he came in as a more mature player and did develop underneath Shanahan. Certainly when you look at Matt Ryan, everyone wants to point to that 2016 season. Matt Ryan had many 4,000-yard passing seasons prior to the very electric season with Kyle Shanahan. Again, an 8th-year NFL vet who I think can deal a bit more with Shanahan's approach to coaching, which seems, again, to just be the stick approach, right? Not able to wrap his arms around players. When you're talking about a young man, a young adult, and you look at a coach that is somehow a bit of a mix of a teacher, a father figure, all those things that young men look up to a leader in their life to be on some level, if that person can't wrap their arms around you at some point in your career, make you feel supported, safe, that he's got your back no matter what, it's just hard to imagine that development taking place. So there's no clear-cut track record of Shanahan being able to do it himself. But to your point, what do you do if you've wasted the first 2 years of his career underneath Shanahan, and then you're counting on Jed to get it right the first time around? Otherwise, you've wasted years 3 and 4. It goes downhill quickly. So to me, I believe that the 49ers have put themselves in a situation where it has to be the guy. It has to be that, yes, Trey Lance is the correct answer, and yes, Kyle can develop him. Because if you pull the parachute on this one, apt analogy there with you jumping out of a plane this weekend for the first time, saw that on Twitter. If you pull the parachute on Kyle Shanahan at this point, you're headed into the unknown, and you could waste years of Lance development with coach after coach after coach, year after year after year, new offensive coordinator after new offensive coordinator. And NorCal Refrigeration and HVAC brings up Jed is the reason Jimmy is starting. He ruined Alex Smith and does not want to repeat it. That's also why Kyle stays as head coach. I could understand that logic. I could see wanting to keep them paired up because that's your best chance of it working. Breaking it up at this point almost throws you into a spiral that you know is going to end badly for Trey Lance. And there's too much talent that is flashed there to not do everything you can to develop it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Rob, I don't know, man, because if he's not the guy, somebody in the comments said that, who was it? Pettis and Pettis and KB both had good games yesterday.
Perfect, right? One was 5 for 5 and the other was 4 for 4 or something like that. Pettis thrown to 5 times, 5 receptions.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a guy that was left for the dead by the 49ers. Everybody thought he wasn't even good enough to be on a roster. We were surprised that he was able to stick with the team and he gets an opportunity and does something with it. I'm not saying it was an amazing game or anything like that, but just the fact that these guys are left. Solomon Thomas is another one.
Right.
Solomon Thomas is having a really good season. The best season of his career. Kirk Cousins was one where as soon as Shanahan left, boom, he blows up. I don't know, man. This is what Shanahan does well. Shanahan takes guys who are already established and gets the best out of them. I will not take that away from Shanahan. He's done that with multiple players. Multiple players, especially on the offensive side, have had their best games or their best seasons, rather, under Shanahan after already being established. It's very different developing something from scratch versus coming in and being the guy that says, here's the garnish that this meal needs. I'm going to add that final touch and this meal's perfect. Right. But the meal's already been prepared. Now he's got to cook from scratch. I don't think he has the ability to do that.
Great analogy. The meal is cooked. Kyle just plates it, right? Kyle just makes it look beautiful. He takes everything that player is already doing well and puts them in the best situation to showcase those talents. I believe that's what you saw with Matt Schaub and Matt Ryan. That fits the narrative. Development is saying you're not great in these areas. We're going to work on that and get you better. And Kyle, to this point, in my mind, has shown no ability to do that. And worse yet, in our next topic here, he seems to show zero faith in the quarterback position, whether we're talking about Jimmy or Trey Lance, right? Either one is capable of regression. If you want to win, either one needs to be put in a situation to succeed. They both need to feel confident in what they're doing and feel as if their coach has confidence in their ability to execute. And what is clear to this point in the season, Jimmy with the messaging of flirting with any quarterback out there not named Jimmy Garoppolo, trying to bring him in to replace him. And with Lance, the messaging has been consistent. Well, he's young and he's just not ready to come in yet. Just can't be trusted to run the offense currently. When he does come in, we'll completely scrap what we normally do and throw in some mixed up version of what he used to do at North Dakota State, minus the play action pass, which was a staple of our offense. It's wild. Kyle's game plan, his play calling, it makes it very clear that he has little to no faith in Jimmy G and his ability to execute. We see it on a regular basis that he's dialing back the playbook because of the limitations of Jimmy G. The question I ask is, will he show any greater faith in the rookie? So far, simply by not playing him, simply by not working him into these games, he's showing little faith. He's made it abundantly clear to this point that he feels Lance isn't ready, and he feels Lance's physical gifts don't provide enough of a platform for him to play while he's quote unquote not ready. So will he, Coach Kyle Shanahan, change his tune after being humiliated again this week?
Sure doesn't seem like it. You know, the only quarterback that he has good things to say about is Nate frickin' Sudfeld. He says glowing things about him. He talks about how he's a pro, he's a gamer. If we have to go to Nate, I'd be proud to put him on the field.
Sudfeld season.
Listen, he treats him like he did Beathard. It's absolutely crazy. But I mean, is he going to change? No, he's not going to change. Hell, he had the opportunity today to pump up Jimmy G, who he said is his starter, and he started out by saying, "Yeah, that's the worst game Jimmy's played, but listen, we're not going to change things after one bad game." And everything else that went into that. Kyle's not going to change. This is who Kyle is. Kyle has this thought that everybody else around him is screwing up. He's the guy that goes into a meeting and says, "You know why we failed today? It's because of all of you. It wasn't me. I did what I had to do. All of you, all 52 of you screwed up. I did what I was supposed to do." That's the way that I look at Kyle. That's the feeling I get from him. And I feel like every time he has a chance to portray something different, he doesn't do it.
It is wild. Julio calls out as well that, yes, in fact, Kyle loves high effort backups with little to no talent. It seems that he's attempting to illustrate to these talented players. He's saying, listen, you, first, second string, you are wildly talented. You possess these physical traits and these gifts that this third or fourth stringer does not. But look at what that third or fourth stringer is consistently bringing to the table. And it's a valid point. Like, I get what he's trying to send in the message, right? That's a message that, yes, needs to be sent at some times. What's just so wild to me is him continuing to send the message so ineffectively that it has repeatedly backfired on him, the way in which he is questioning people's work ethics, the way in which he is testing them, putting them in the doghouse, and the refusal to change there. With that evidence, it's hard to make the case that he is going to make any type of a big shift and all of a sudden put his faith in Trey Lance and wrap his arms around Trey Lance. I do think it's a bit of insanity for us to hope that that is a way in which he's going to respond at this point, when all of the evidence to this point goes the other direction, right? Takes us down the path of no. In fact, Kyle is going to continue to challenge Trey in this public forum, attempting him to grow as a player, as opposed to working with him one-on-one in a scenario that's behind closed doors. And quite honestly, coming from sales organizations where we dealt with needing star players to up their game, I have never been within an organization that airs their dirty laundry in such a nonchalant way as what I've seen from the 49ers with Kyle Shanahan. It is not like the leaks that used to happen. It's very direct, but it's equally as damaging to the ego of the organization as a whole with how they operate with confidence.
What's crazy to me, though, is I feel like Lance fits all that billing, right? You talk about he's got the talent,
Yes,
but
he
he
does.
also shows that he comes from struggle. And the fact that this kid didn't even start on his high school team until like his junior year as a quarterback, then he goes out, wants to play college ball and stay a quarterback, even though everybody else was recruiting him as anything but that. He gets his spot at NDSU. He works his butt off and he does everything that he could do. He came out and not only played well, I get it, it was at the FCS level, but he probably played the best that any quarterback has ever played at that level, and he did it as a 19-year-old. That talks about this kid's work ethic. He works his butt off. He learns the playbook. He comes in very prepared. He takes onus. He takes responsibility of everything that goes wrong whenever he's playing. What more does he need to show Kyle other than he has all that same heart? By the way, this is a kid who had 83% of the plays heaped onto him his first start. He ran out there, sprains his knee, continues to fight. There's the one play that everybody loves where he gets the helmet knocked off of him and he's still dragging and fighting and fighting. That is exactly what Kyle Shanahan loves in his players. It's why he loves a Kittle. It's why he loves a Debo. Trey Lance has all that same heart, yet he doesn't get the love. I don't understand it.
It's wild. Trey is absolutely the type that has shown he can fight through adversity. He is the first guy in, last guy out. He is what you look for. And even then, Kyle seems so reluctant to fully commit to the young gentleman and throw his support behind him. I thought for sure, Jesse, this was the week. I was flabbergasted when the conference call news started coming out on Twitter of, guess what? Guess who's starting again Sunday? It was straight up wild to me.
It blew my mind. And obviously I read too far into it, but I genuinely thought the turning point, the moment that Kyle said Jimmy is no longer the starter, is when he put him back out there for the final play when there was nothing that could be gained from it. He didn't kneel on the ball. He was trying to throw the ball for whatever reason, and he had Jimmy go out there and take that final play. Jimmy, who's coming off of an injury, Jimmy, who himself made excuses and said the calf wasn't all the way 100%. That right there told me that's not what you do with your starting quarterback. That's what you do with the guy that you're saying, this is the last time we're going to see you as a starter in a 49er uniform, barring injury. Have at it. Go get your final play in, kid. We're moving on to the rookie. That's what I thought he was telling everybody. And then he came out in the press conference after the game, was asked about Jimmy being the starter, and he was non-committal, which then piqued my interest even more. And I said, well, hold on. I saw that. I made that assumption. Then when he's asked about Jimmy, he's non-committal and naming a starter. And I'm going, yes, this is it. And then today happened. And I figured, okay, well, maybe it's because Lance is not expected to play this week. That makes sense. But then he follows it up and says, Lance should practice by Wednesday.
Be limited on Wednesday.
What is happening right now?
It's wild. It is absolutely wild at this point. Just wild. Talking about, that was not the comment I meant to bring up on there, but now I have lost it. But one was around the season is over. Yeah, Bob Money here coming in. Bob Money talking about the season is over. I am not quite there yet, but it is definitely bleak, and we have to be looking at this thing from a different perspective. We have to be looking at this thing not only in winning games, but bringing some excitement back to this team. And certainly you thought that injecting Trey Lance would have been one way to go about it. But if we look at potential other ways for the 49ers to inject some life in this season, one of our last topics, and we'll keep these both short to get us out of here, because while everyone is sticking with us and we appreciate those viewers, we're coming up on 90 minutes. The trade deadline is approaching. Certainly 49ers fans are anxious, thinking that the 49ers could be either sellers or buyers at this point. They could believe that they are one or two patches away from turning this thing back around, although that seems a bit far-fetched from my standpoint, or they could be saying we need to recoup some of the draft capital we gave up in moving up to 3 to get Trey. What do you see as some of the potential moves that the 49ers might make here at the deadline?
I feel like they should be a little bit of both, right? So they should be buyers in the sense that if they can get players that fit this team for the future, then they go out and make those moves. So maybe it's the corner for, and I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, Denver, the Denver corner. He's 29 years old, came over from Chicago.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, but I'm drawing a blank as well.
Yeah, I don't. Either way, somebody in the chat will know. But
they'll throw it in.
So yeah, for sure. So either him, which I think he would fit because he's probably could be had for a 3rd or 4th rounder. He's probably got 2 to 3 good years in him. And unlike all the other veteran corners that have been on this team, he has no injury history. Kyle Fuller. Thank you guys.
Kyle Fuller.
I knew you guys would come through. So
it was
Kyle Fuller.
The Jedi
right?
came in first on that one. The
right.
Jedi always does. The Jedi always wins.
Even if he hit enter last, it came in first. So listen, Fuller to me fits that mold perfectly because he's a good player. He's not injury prone and he's a veteran. I think he fits 3 very, very good needs for this team going forward. Then you've got guys like Cam Dantzler who could probably be had for a 4th. That's somebody that I've got my eye on. Again, not a lot of capital, young, moldable, seems to have on paper all the skills. He's got to be taught a little bit. So both of those guys fit the need as far as future and making the 49ers better. However, they've also got to look at trading pieces.
Yes,
that
recoup some capital.
Exactly. How do you recoup some capital? Well, you've got guys out there that are on 1-year deals. You've got the Tarts, you've got the K1s, you've got possibly even an Armstead, something like that. DJ Jones, some of these guys.
Sherfield.
Yes, these 1-year deal guys or big money guys like an Eric Armstead. That's how you can recoup some of the capital. And I feel like they've got to be buyers and sellers, but only to build the future. And they should not, and I hope they do not, do some of the things that they did last year and making some rash decisions trying to plug these holes that just did not work, screwing themselves for the future, which you talked about earlier, Rob. That is not what they should do. I'm worried that they may go out and beat Chicago, and then they feel like they're a little bit reinvigorated. They've got a home game against Arizona, a huge home game coming up, and they say, listen, we go out and we make a move. We pick up a veteran who's on a 1-year deal just to make some things happen, make it shake. Maybe that's what we need. And then they lose capital and they do the exact opposite of what we said that they should do. That's what worries me a little bit. But they should do a little bit of both, and it should be towards building the future.
Yeah, great points there. And there are a couple of things that we hit on earlier in this show that are relevant to the logic behind this. And that is the idea that, yes, in 2020, you poured good money after bad. You gave up valuable cap dollars that could have been used this year in chasing a season that was already lost. You have to wonder if that's what will happen again. And the reason I have to wonder is top of mind that the person who's in charge of making these trades is on the hot seat in my book, right? John Lynch, whether he wants to admit it to himself or not, is certainly the man who's going to answer for these issues at the end of the season. He seems the most likely to lose his job and therefore would have the most incentive to try and get that 1 or 2 pieces that push you back over the hump this year. In particular, if, as you point out, they win the game against Chicago. You lose against Chicago, you're right up against the trade deadline, it becomes sell. You know, it's Black Monday all over again, right? You are trying to dump stock at that point. I'm with you on the priorities. It has to be signing people that have future value. It's not about value this year. It's about inexpensive pieces that add value going forward, that fill needs for future years, to get bodies under contract, because the 49ers have very few people under contract for next year. And then I'm not selling any of the core players. This team is talented, and you're building around that talent. You are absolutely, when you're selling, dumping those people that are on 1-year deals who you probably cannot afford to re-sign next season, and attempting to recoup capital from some people who are still in a legitimate playoff hunt and not just not mathematically eliminated, as the 49ers will be for most of the season this year. All right, last question to wrap us up on, keeping it quick. Any positive takeaways, Jesse? I feel like I owe this to my listeners because I'm usually a positive guy, and we got a lot of viewers tonight, and I'm sure they're like, what the hell happened to Rob? Like, is he just feeling damaged at this point? And yes, that's as a matter of fact how I'm feeling. Pretty damaged at this point. Like I have been repeatedly beat by my spouse, and I continue to come back for more. It's just unhealthy at this point. So give me something you got from that shellacking Sunday night, Jesse. What was a positive takeaway?
Azeez Al-Shaair, Nick Bosa, Mitchell, Debo,
Elijah Mitchell,
and yeah, that's probably all I can go with. Those are the four to me that just really stood out. And luckily, and Moore, Jalen Moore.
Look at that. That was a bright spot.
Mitchell, Moore, and Azeez Al-Shaair, 3 young studs that are on the horizon. I'm extremely happy to see those 3 play well. And then, of course, Bosa and Debo are a little bit younger, but they're looking for that second contract. Both of those guys have balled out this season. That's some major bright spots for the future of this team.
Fans are agreeing with you on those bright spots. I agree with you on those bright spots. I am left with very few things to say that are positive at this point. I'm glad that we don't have another bye this week. I don't think, I didn't mean to put that up there because I disagree with that. I thought Moore looked good in that one for a rookie. But I'll have to go back and look at it because NorCal Refrigeration typically comes in with good insights. So if he says Moore struggled, potentially he did on some snaps. I saw some positives there, but honestly, as I was going through racking my brain, I had to say to myself, the biggest positive I have for tonight is that the Trailblazers play at 7:30. So I got something to take my mind off of the 49ers loss. Well, Jesse, it's been 90 minutes, dude. You have stuck with me. This has been a phenomenal show. Really appreciated you being on. Had a lot of viewers throughout it. I hope that they enjoyed it. To all of you in the chat, appreciate you coming on and being so involved in the dialogue. Sorry we couldn't get to more of your questions, but Jesse and I had a lot to say tonight that we had to get off of our chests. I look forward to having an opportunity to come over to your new channel there. Again, to repeat, Last Second Sports. The description, the link is down in the description of the video. Go sign up. Go subscribe. If you thought you were subscribed before, the channel had to be reinvigorated for something stupid. Go back and show your support. Jesse, thanks so much for coming on today, my friend.
Hey, thank you very much. And make sure that you show Rob some love. It's free to hit the like button. Make sure you do that. Give him a sub. Hit that bell notification so that you never miss an episode. And listen, if this is your first time watching Rob, I can tell you, and you probably learned throughout the show, that he's very entertaining. He knows his stuff, and he's got that radio voice, which I love.
I'm all about the entertainment factor, Jesse. That is what I am here for, my man. All right, Niner faithful, thanks for sticking with us. Thanks for sticking with the Niners, even though it's been a challenging week, and we'll see you again soon.